Let's talk to Miriam Cates, Conservative MP, to see if she is. Miriam, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Mike.
Now, I mean, I've heard of some interesting ways of moving figures around and making data sound better than it is, but I've basically likened Keir Starmer's idea about migrants into you can do away with shoplifting as well next by making shoplifting legal. And that way, when anybody takes anything that's not paid for out of a shop, they won't have to face any criminal charges.
Yes, it does seem a bit like that, doesn't it? And of course, I agree with him that we should be going after these international criminal gangs, absolutely, and that will require international cooperation, of course. But at the same time, we should also be holding individuals accountable when they break the law, exactly as in your shoplifting analogy.
Right.
And so, of course, it's right that if you arrive in this country illegally, you should not be allowed to stay. And that is the government's plan under the new illegal migration bill and under the Rwanda plan, which, of course, is now is being held up by the courts at the moment. But we will get a judgment soon as to whether or not that can go ahead. So I think it is, you know, we've been saying for a long time, we want to know what Keir Starmer and the Labour Party think about things and when are they going to get off the fence. Well, I think they've well and truly got off the fence. And actually, it's very helpful to know what they think about migration. We're only a year out from the general election and the public deserves to know. So, of course, it is very helpful to know what Sir Keir's plan is. But I think, you know, we need to be clear what this means. If we had some sort of agreement with the EU, our migration policy would no longer be under our control again, just like it wasn't before Brexit. But also the idea of having to take our share of illegal migrants from across Europe. I mean, let's think about that. Italy is receiving hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants at the moment. How would we divide it up? We're one of the most populous countries in Europe. Would that mean we have to take the majority? I mean, this really is a step back into losing control of our borders. And as disappointing as some of the progress has been over recent years from the Conservative Party, and I agree with that, this is really back to a situation where we have no control whatsoever.
No, it really is. And given how many people have come into the country at the moment legally as well, I mean, you're basically under Keir Starmer looking at a situation of increasing the population of Britain by somewhere like 4 to 5 million every 3 or 4 years, you know, which is not sustainable. I mean, it's already very crowded here. We are already one of the most densely populated nations in Europe. And also, I don't think he has any sense of what the problem is, because by saying to 120,000 a year, you can come legally, what do you think is going to happen? Do you think that's really going to be it? Of course people will keep coming illegally, won't they?
Exactly. And one of the problems that we've got at the moment is actually within the UK, that it is very difficult to deport people, even if they're known criminals, because there are certain groups of lawyers and charities who put an enormous amount of time, money and effort into stopping us deporting people who really should be deported. So, again, I doubt that would improve under a Labour government. But even if his plan did go ahead, it's unclear how he would return the illegal migrants to the EU to then take back some of theirs. So it's very unclear how that would work. But as you say, all it would do, as it sounds from what he's saying, is increase even further the number of the amount of immigration coming to this country. And you might remember, Mike, before Christmas, the group that I'm part of, the New Conservatives, we put out a report into migration and with ideas and proposals to bring the numbers of migrants down to around 200,000 a year. They're at 600,000 at the moment, so that's quite a significant drop. And actually, we do need to take some quite strong steps in order to do that. But it doesn't sound like Keir Starmer really understands why people do want to control migration, which isn't that they're racist or they're not welcoming to immigrants. It's that this has an impact on housing, on the NHS, on schools, on taxation, on the amount of, like you say, of traffic and things like that. And so, you know, people voted for Brexit to take back control of our borders, and it sounds like the Labour Party want to reverse that entirely.
Yeah. But also, why do we have this kind of inevitable belief that somehow we must have immigration because there are people who won't fill the jobs that are already here? You know, because we've got so much going on at the moment in terms of numbers of people coming here, people see that the actual gross number, you know, before you take those away who actually left the country, 1.2 million came in 2022. Legally, you know, that was with work visas, with student visas and all of that. Nobody's really very clear about where that takes us, whether it's good or bad. Some of it might be good, not all of it, particularly if they're bringing dependents as well. So I think there are people in this country who are sick to death of just all of us saying, oh, but we have to take some people. Well, why? How about we don't take any people for a while until it calms down a bit?
Well, I do think that we have a responsibility, and I think most British people agree with this, to take people who are genuine asylum seekers, people who are being persecuted or
Why,
fleeing from war, like the Ukraine, for example. But that is entirely different, A, from the kind of illegal people smuggling gangs that we're seeing on the small boats, but also from people who are economic migrants. They're coming here because they want work.
Right.
And that's, why wouldn't they? I understand that. It's up to our government to put the rules in place. And
Right.
unfortunately, we've made the rules far too lax in terms of the kind of jobs people should be doing when they get here and how much they need to earn. And so now you can, as you say, come over here to do relatively low-skilled, low-paid jobs and actually be a net beneficiary of our taxpayer-funded welfare system and NHS. And that's wrong. That's what makes people cross. That's what makes people feel that it's unfair. And